but we are expected and required to deliver deterministic outcomes in an increasingly probabilistic world. So you're not any longer entering from the top of the funnel, you're entering from the bottom of the funnel. Our role as marketeers, and specifically brand marketeers in this, I would say, increasingly non-brand world, is to, at one point, an influencer or creator in a single YouTube video revealed that basically that promise was a lie. You were in 100% control of your own narrative. You're not anymore.
Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Push podcast. My name's Jack Ferguson, an experienced brand strategist with a science background. In my career, I've worked across 25 industries and helped increase client and employer revenue by over $40 million. I will be your host. This season of the podcast is essential listening for marketers looking to better sell their strategies to stakeholders, get client buy-in, and keep internal teams engaged. Thanks for being here, and don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 65. Today's guest is Jelena Veselinovic, a marketer with deep and varied expertise, having spent over 25 years in the discipline. She's spent over 18 years working in the marketing team at Coca-Cola and 3.5 years more recently as head of brand marketing at SaaS company Miro. So she's currently working as a consultant in a fractional capacity as head of brand or VP of brand, and has worked with the likes of Jim Beam and Jack Daniels. What's really interesting about Jelena is that she comes from a philosophy background. So she describes that as a core part of her being. She's a philosopher at heart. And this is how she observes the world, which makes her a strong marketer, because philosophers start from very deep questions and uncover the real reasons behind problems, behaviors, and whatnot. Like me, she loves to connect things and often departs outside of the marketing world in order to bring those references and metaphors and explanations back into the marketing world. So if you read her Substack, which I will link to in the description, it's full of metaphors and analogies where you can see that background coming out. Shortly, we talk about her article, The Quantum State of Branding in particular, where she talks about Newton's theory of a deterministic mechanical universe from the 1600s, where he basically painted a world where outcomes can be predicted with mathematical precision. Inputs created a guaranteed output. Quantum mechanics have proved this wrong in the 1900s and showed that no, at the fundamental level, outcomes are not determined, they're probabilistic. So we speak about how marketing often is expected to operate within the deterministic model of the 1600s rather than the updated probabilistic quantum mechanics model of the 1900s. Jelena, hello. How are you going today? Thank you for joining me.
Hi. I am doing well, and I'm super excited to be here and talk some smart stuff, weird stuff, interesting, useful, hopefully, so we'll see.
Oh, I think we'll do plenty of that on this conversation. And yes, thank you for joining me from the other side of the world. I believe you're based over in Austin.
I am based in Austin, Texas.
Yes, so I'm coming to you from the east coast of Australia. So amazing that it still amazes me we can do this type of things. But I come across your Substack, and that's what motivated me to reach out to you to do the episode, your Substack being called Rewire Your Mind. You've got a lot of interesting takes on branding and marketing, and it's quite different from the cookie cutter stuff that I read everywhere. A lot of it really resonated with me, especially the reference back to the science and this type of thing, which we can talk about soon. But yeah, wanted to get you on and discuss how you view marketing, because some of the things you speak about, as well as about how it's changing or how brand is changing, there's things within that aren't necessarily the same as maybe they were 20, 25 years ago. You talk about the fact that we should be more probabilistic than deterministic. And I've been on that for about a year now, I think. As soon as I heard that, that's one of those things that was like a bit of a light bulb moment for me, was I thought, oh, that's a much better way of thinking about it and a much better way of being realistic about what we can do, but also gave me words for what I haven't had words for before. So let's start there. If we're talking about determinism in marketing or branding or probabilism, what do you think when you hear those words?
Well, first of all, I want to start by saying that I'm a classically trained marketeer, and I believe that marketing is science, or, well, they say it's a mix between art and science. I buy into that, but I'm also like Byron Sharp person. I very much believe and follow his thinking. However, this conversation about the probabilistic and deterministic nature of what we do is, I believe, like coming not so much from the science of marketing, but it is coming from the practice. I've been practicing marketing for around 25 years now, and some things just don't seem to be true, or they don't seem to be true now as they used before. So this was my way of expressing this, or maybe it was my way of giving words or meaning to some internal, I would say, frustration or anxiety about marketing that I'm experiencing every day. I also think now, more than before, we as marketeers, and this defined differently in different schools of thought, but we are expected and required to deliver deterministic outcomes in an increasingly probabilistic world. And the difference between the two, the gap between the two, is a frustration that I feel, and I believe many of us feel, especially the strategists among us, because you're supposed to predict how the world will behave. And these strategies are always super smart. They are based on a lot of experience, past learning, science, data, all of that. But somehow that science, that strategy does not reflect or does not translate in reality in a linear fashion. So my definition of quantum marketing or quantum branding is really a manifestation of that dichotomy of marketing today.
Got it. And when we're talking about determinism, it's like this idea that we can control outcomes. We can just put together this plan or do these set of activities and it will return us X amount of money in this amount of time. Definitely.
Yeah. So I did write article or several articles about that on my Substack, like really because this is an idea that I was obsessing about for a long, and I needed to put words to it. But it's really coming from that idea. And sorry, just as a digression, like I am not someone who knows much or at all anything about the physics. I'm just kind of impressed and inspired by that discipline. And I am often borrowing the metaphors from the physics, which doesn't make me a physicist. So the reason why I'm saying is that in this particular piece, or when I talk about the quantum state of marketing, where I'm starting or where my thesis is coming from, is that in a way, like the marketing as we know it was defined or based almost on a Newtonian deterministic way of thinking. Like Newton created his work in 1600. We are like a couple of hundreds of years since then, and we are still thinking the same. And when I'm saying that we are thinking the same, like it is that idea, there is an input and there is an output, and there is a linear path between the two. And for as long as you can figure out that path, you can control the output, which we can't. I don't know if we ever could, but let's assume that the environment and the conditions in which we worked as marketeers were significantly simpler in the past. So maybe this dynamic between the input and the output was easier to predict. But that's definitely not the case anymore. Where it all started is the AIDA model, which is, I would say, the first version of the purchase funnel or the customer journey funnel or whatever you define it. But it is a very linear path. And people don't behave in linear ways anymore, but there are many other things like a customer journey, like how do you predict conversion rates, conversion paths, and all this wonderful thing, which is pretty much in today's world like a state of fiction and not the real thing.
Okay. And that's when you talk about the AI, attention, interest, decision, what was it? Decision, action? I can't remember the four things.
Yes. Attention, interest. I think it's a decision, action.
Can't remember So I think that's about 100 years ago, a little bit over that come out. Yeah. And it just made me think that when you're talking through that, it's almost like, because the inputs have increased, the outputs have probably got more variable, and maybe in the past, they were probably just better proxies, really, because there was less inputs to choose from.
There were less inputs to choose from, but yes, firstly, we lived in a very different world. Firstly, the world that was dominated by TV. And secondly, at the very beginning, there were only few channels. So there were really very few options, choices, distractions for people to divert from this, I would say, predicted path. I don't know if at this time this linear deterministic way of marketing was true, but definitely it was much easier to predict, to measure, and to execute. Now, we as people, as consumers, as marketeers, and as brands, we are constantly immersed in a world of social media, and not only social media, anything media. Anything today is a piece of information that can impact, shift, and change the way you perceive something, the way you act, in infinite number of ways. So basically, every single impact at any moment in time can change the output or the outcome in a ways that it's impossible to predict. So it's almost like that this illusion that we as marketeers can chart the customer journey and can actually expect people to behave like that. We replace people with the dotted lines, and then we imagine that this is how the things happen in real life, which is problematic in so many ways. But that's just simply not what's happening. And also, I was thinking the other day, not only that it's impossible, but if you think whatever model of the funnel you're using, whether it's AIDA or something else, it doesn't really matter. The logic behind that is that firstly, the behavior or the movement through the funnel, it's sequential. It starts one place and then it moves further down. But secondly, that it's linear. And the path is neither sequential nor linear. And more importantly, the funnel, even if it existed in whichever format or in whichever shape, like different schools of marketing, different brands represent the funnel in different shapes. No matter what the shape you believe in, the actual steps in the funnel are also shifting, because in many examples, the funnel is collapsed. So think, for instance, a couple of things. Firstly, let's say the consumer can enter that funnel at any place, any moment in time. So it doesn't necessarily anymore come from the awareness point of view or top of the funnel. In many cases, which we can also talk about, the funnel is actually inverted because the customers, consumers, however you call them, are coming from the place of product reviews or what other people said about the product. Today, that's more often than not the entry point. So you're not any longer entering from the top of the funnel, you're entering from the bottom of the funnel. But secondly, think about influencers, which are magicians of our times. The influencer post or the influencer, I don't know, whatever that is, a video or Instagram, a single post can take you through all the steps of the funnel and everything in a single moment. Moreover, you also have the ability or the opportunity to purchase directly from that post. So basically, whatever the funnel was or whatever the illusion of the funnel was, that doesn't exist anymore because everything is always happening at the same time. And that's literally not possible to predict.
And there's a few paths I could go down with this, but when you were talking there, I was imagining that heaviness almost that marketers are probably increasingly feeling we're expected to prop up this illusion for other members of the teams because the other stakeholders in the team want something predictable.
Yeah, especially big corporations are built on ability of following patterns, like patterns, frameworks, models. And the reason this is the case, because in order for the big corporation to perform efficiently, that corporation or that company needs to mitigate the risk. Now, mitigating the risk means being able to always at any point, being able to measure or to drive direct correlation between what you are doing and what you are getting in return. So in that respect, I think that you are right. Everyone is looking at marketeers to predict, to measure, and to declare how much money do you need to spend in order to drive whatever KPI you want. And I would say the whole advent of AI and measurement tools is even like adding to this illusion, which is partially illusion, partially it's not. Because it is true that today we can measure much more than we were ever able to measure. But my question is not if we can measure. The question is if the things that we measure actually make sense and if they are actually useful. And I think in many ways they are not useful because not that the world around is changing so much, but because the nature of human choice, it's not rational, it's not linear. And also in more cases than not, it feels completely random. And that's why I was saying I'm a huge believer in Byron Sharp's thinking. He's thinking on how brands grow. He's saying that brands primarily grow through the light purchases, not heavy purchasing, but the light purchases by nature are actually very random. Like from my time at Coke, and I'm not saying that was the case with Coke, but it was eye-opening. In many cases, what we are measuring is actually consequential purchase because you come to a restaurant, you order Coke and their Pepsi account. So you buy Pepsi. Or you come to the birthday party and they serve you certain drinks that they have at Coke, so you drink those drinks. That's not you making any purposeful, meaningful choice. It's you actually acting within the circumstantial frame of the life situation. And that's also something that feels completely random. So, that's why I'm saying it's just a bunch of illusions that we can actually really ever truly determine. What we can do, and I think what marketing is turning into, is managing probabilities. I can build a plan that will drive maybe a higher probability to achieve something than something else. So our job is really almost like a statisticians to drive plans that are mitigating the risk or that are driving higher probability of things happening in the real world. Now, the other thing that I'm talking about in my Substack is that illusion of probabilistic world. It's actually quite liberating. That doesn't mean that we as marketeers are less useful. In many ways, we are even more useful. But the thing is that we are not managing people. I can never engineer the way you will behave in a certain environment. I cannot predict after we finish this podcast, Jack will go and buy Coke. That's really not the case. But what we can do is create conditions around you to increase the chance of you behaving in a certain way. And this is also connected to another concept, which is the concept that I speak of that as almost like a brand's Schrodinger's cat phenomenon. But what that means is that when you meet the brand, that brand is never a fixed property. I'm obviously exaggerating to make a point. But the brand as such does not exist outside of us. I mean, the product does, the brand doesn't. The way we meet the brand is always some kind of encounter. And what I mean by encounter, it's a state of mind. It's an interaction between what you are seeing on the outside in a certain context and what you are bringing to that situation. So encounter is a dynamic state. So a brand exists as a product of an encounter, which is a function of environment, of your mindset, of the situation, and maybe many different things. So my point is, I can't engineer your behavior, but I can potentially, at best, create favorable conditions for that encounter to lead you to the favorable outcome. So think almost as these encounters or those contexts or those conditions, like as a riverbed. I'm not managing you as a person. I'm not managing your behavior, but I am deepening or broadening that riverbed in order to move you through that riverbed in a way that I want it. And my job is firstly to create that path, but then it's also to remove any frictions, any obstacles for you to move along that path. So that's more likely scenario. And the reason why I'm calling brands Schrödinger cat brands is that similarly to that concept, if you meet the brand in a certain environment, if you encounter the brand in a certain encounter, you as a person, based on the conditions, based on the environment, context, your mindset, your physical state, will either connect to that brand or not. So what I'm trying to say, even if the product is out there, based on your conditions that you are kind of adding to that situation, that brand will be dead or alive. If the conditions are right, the brand will be alive and desirable and valuable and all of that. If not, if the conditions are not favorable to that action, the brand will be dead. That's why I'm saying that the brand is never a fixed property. It's always a function of what you bring to that situation.
And I'm just wondering now, I'm imagining people listening in and they'll understand, but then they might think, well, how do we speak to stakeholders about this type of thing?
Yes. Firstly, I think that something that I learned maybe a hard way, that our role as marketeers, and specifically brand marketeers in this, I would say, increasingly non-brand world, is to not only do smart things, be smart, be expert, be all of that. It's more about creating the right expectations, educating people, educating stakeholders, and bringing the stakeholders along. Because the success of marketing is very little about the marketing plan. It is about energizing and rallying the whole organization behind a single ambition. So without the stakeholders that will share the same perspective, same point of view as a strategist, brand expert, marketing experts, etc., without bringing everyone to the same page, you will not be able to move. So basically what I'm saying, your expertise does not mean anything unless the people around you see the same thing or believe the same thing. So our job is as much about inspiration and education as much as it is about actually creating media marketing plans. When I go to LinkedIn, and I like to joke that LinkedIn is a bane of my existence. There are so many things that I disagree there about. So our job is to educate. And that's why, honestly, I can't be silent. That's why I'm going there every day. That's why I'm writing. Because I believe it's my responsibility to change the state of things. Because the state of things as currently is not conducive to good quality work or good value work. And I believe it is our job as marketeers to create value for the companies, for the brands, for consumers, for communities. And if you are not doing the right thing, you're not creating value, you are destroying value. The first thing, when I joined Coke, the first thing that I was told, and ever since then, I had this pinned on my wall. The first thing that I was told was that every single decision that I make will have the power to create or destroy value for the company. So I think we as marketeers need to take on responsibility. The things that we are saying, that we are doing, that we are making are directly correlated with the value that we are creating for the companies and for the shareholders, for brands, profitability, all these things. We are in the job of creating value. I like to joke sometimes that we are all just overpaid salespeople because we are in the business of selling. We are just using different tools. And if these tools are outdated, we are directly impacting profitability of the company. And you're saying, yes, there is a huge burden on marketeers to prove the value of they are doing. And I'm like, it should be, because unless we believe that marketing is important lever of the P&L in organization, no one else will. I'm just saying that instead of drawing unrealistic, illusionary maps of how consumers move, we should realize that the reality changed and we should start using different tools. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that marketers should be absolved of responsibility, by no means. On the contrary.
Yeah. I think on this point, I saw where you are creating conditions and that's what we need to do. Your point around Costco, I thought was quite interesting here, where you've talked about how they've almost changed away from focusing on impulse purchases. But I'd love to talk about that example in context of what you're talking about here. I'm guessing in the US, they moved away from trying to get impulse purchases out of the customers that entered their stores.
Actually, the story of Costco is in a slightly different context, but it's very much connected to this. The way I was talking about Costco was in the context of what we discussed previously, that we, as consumers, people, call us whatever you want, we are constantly immersed in the world of social. We are constantly immersed, we are constantly informed, we are constantly connected. We are connected to what is happening in the world. We are connected to brands. We are connected to information, influencers, whatever. And we are connected to each other, which means that the information is constantly flowing. There is no way, unless you are a hermit living off grid, that you are not constantly receiving a continuous stream of information. So the reputation is becoming extremely important for brands. And by reputation, I don't even mean some ethical stance of brands or companies. I mean the basic reputation is that what you are promising to deliver is actually true to the product experience. When I worked at Coke, they were making sure that we all understand that it takes hundreds, in case of Coke, hundreds of years to build a reputation for the company. And it takes a millisecond to destroy. But that's really about connecting that idea, what you are promising as a brand, as a company, as a product, and delivering it. So the story in which I was talking about the Costco was actually talking about another company called Honey. And Honey was one of these online services that offering coupons for cheaper, whatever, purchases. And they were promising that they will always give you the cheapest possible price through digital couponing. Someone at one point, an influencer or creator in a single YouTube video revealed that basically that promise was a lie because they were working directly with the retailers to kind of promote certain brands or to promote certain products, etc. So their promise of always giving you the cheapest price was simply not true. And what that means, in a single video, the valuation of the company went from XYZ to almost to nearly zero because the trust was broken, because what the brand was promising was not true to what the product was delivering. And at that one moment, it was all wiped away. The reason why is that important is that in today's world, the information does not disappear. If there is an information about honey or that specific video, it will not go away. So that stain on their reputation stays there forever. So again, reputation is something that you can earn and build, and it's something that you lose in a millisecond. Now, in that context, speaking of Costco, and just for the context of the listeners that do not live in the US, Costco is one of the biggest warehouse retailers. What the Costco is promising is always the cheap price. So I'm not an expert in Costco, but I believe that their margin is kept at 14%. They are not spending any money, not now, not ever, on advertising. All the money that they invest into marketing is going directly into lowering the prices or protecting the prices. And we, as brands or marketeers, are setting traps for consumers. So if you go to any other store, you will have this impulse purchase section next to the cashier in order to capture instant demand. If you're hungry, if you're thirsty, if you're nervous, if you're whatever. It's a beautiful trap that will capture people's attention next to the cashier while you are waiting. Costco doesn't have that. So their planogram of the store is not designed to trap people, but the entire product experience is designed to deliver on the promise of giving people the cheapest possible good quality product, not to trick people into buying something that they don't need or get a higher price or to maximize profit, none of it. So that's the story of Costco.
Yeah, I did read the thing about honey that you did put in, I think that was in another article. Incredible story. I think they had millions and millions in revenue, and you were saying that they just finished overnight in a single video. And then I'm hearing the thing about Costco, they're doing that to mitigate against that reputational risk, which is just give me ideas that maybe we could talk a bit more about the reputational risk. That's a way we could talk about this.
There is a lot of talk right now in the marketing industry about reputation. Reputation is not communication. It's not something you say, oh, look at me, I am trusted brand. I mean, no one cares, honestly. And just as another digression, going back to the, whatever you call it, purchasing funnel, again, which I think it's useful. I think it's a useful lie, but it is still useful. But the way we thought about funnel at Coke, which was not funnel, but we always depicted that journey in a shape of infinity loop. Now, the infinity loop, because of two things. Firstly, it's infinite and it keeps moving, which means that consumers can always enter at any point of the journey and can exit at any point in the journey. So it's not linear. But the other more important is if you think about the infinity loop, it crosses in the middle. Now, what we were trying with this shape or depiction of the customer journey is that crossing in the middle is the point of consumption. It's a point of the product experience. And the idea there was, whatever you are saying, whatever you are promising, whatever you are saying in order to lure people in, always needs to go through that product experience. The moment of product experience can either reiterate or make it stronger, or can completely destroy it and lose the customer forever. That's another, I would say, pain point for me. When you think about reputation, and like in many other contexts, the product experience, the product itself is central to your brand. Product experience is actually the heart, the core of your brand. If there is any sense of gap or dichotomy or dissonance between what you're promising and what people are actually experiencing, you are done. And that's why the product is your brand, or product is the most important tool that you as a brand marketer have. And the truth is the currency that you are using in order to build a brand. And I believe that reputation is all about that. It's not about what you are saying, but about constantly closing the gap between product experience and the brand. That's what it is all about. The idea of Costco is that experience is completely true to what they stand as a brand. It's one and the same.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I find myself sometimes saying to people, brand is what you are, not what you say.
Yes.
Yes, it's one thing I found somewhat useful. I think in one of your articles you were talking about, think about it as a reputation, not as a narrative. I thought, oh, that was a very practical distinction to make between the two.
Because people are increasingly skeptical of the narratives. They're not buying into many things, institutions, politics, media, etc. But brands, among others, are the institutions that they are not buying into anymore. So more than listening to what the brands are saying, they are listening to what other people are saying about the brands. And that, again, product reviews, conversations, etc., is becoming point of entry for people. Some people are calling this intermediation because in the past, the narrative that you are speaking about, so you had a brand or a company, and then you had a narrative that brand is pushing, and then you had consumers that trusted that narrative. They don't anymore. So that narrative was removed from the path of communication. And instead of listening to brands, we are listening to each other. And for that reason, people are very skeptical, and just simply communication does not work anymore as it used to be. Or narrative as a form does not work anymore as it used to be.
Yeah. And it sounds like, particularly if it's incongruent with the service or the product experience after that, it probably could have inverse effects, like it could actually do more damage if you're making promises you're not keeping.
I think definitely. When we didn't have remote controls, where we had one TV set that the whole family was sitting around and one program to watch. At that time, truth was much more difficult to find, to spread. You as a brand or a company, you were in 100% control of your own narrative. You are not anymore. Not only that you are not in control of the narrative, but truth is easier to get by. Truth is more difficult to hide, and it doesn't disappear. So for that reason, if there is ever any discrepancy, it will have a probably disproportionately high negative impact on the company, reputation, company, behavior of the people. Going back to the quantum state of marketing, or you can call it a butterfly effect. One change in the input, no matter how small, one point of dissonance between the brand promise and product experience is enough to change the output in a ways that are disproportional to, let's say, the size of that truth or that lie, I would say. And that's why brands are no longer in control of that. And that's why it is more imperative than ever to be true to what you are saying and doing, because people will find out.
Yeah. Now, I could ask you another probably 50 questions, but I appreciate the time you've given me so far. So we can start to wrap up. But I think on this topic, it's just jogged my memory that you talked about the deterministic approach also isn't respectful. And we're talking about the experience from a narrative through to like a product or service. If that's incongruent, that will be jarring for a start. But also this idea that there's like almost a disrespect that you see in us even thinking like this, that it is a linear journey from start to finish and that we can control the end consumer to do what we want when we want.
Yeah. The point that I was making is that the part of that, I would say, worldview that is defined through Newtonian, linear, deterministic nature of marketing, linear funnels or consumer journeys, etc., is the fact that we are setting traps for people so that we can catch them at the bottom of the funnel. But to use a visual metaphor, I've been always thinking about the pinball machine. And the consumer is nothing else but the ball in that machine. And we are setting these traps in order to move the consumer through the funnel, which means several things. Firstly, we are objectifying a consumer. Consumer is actually becoming a source of profit, a source of revenue. So we used to say that our job is to create value for the company, brand, consumer, and the community in which we operate. But that's also the lie. My purpose is not to create a value. My purpose as a marketeer in that deterministic model is to extract the value from the consumer. And I am putting obstacles and things in order to push the consumer in the way that will extract the maximum value from him or her. Everyone is talking about human-centric marketing. It's not human-centric. We are looking at humans, at consumers, as a means to an end. And end is always the profit. But we are approaching people as objects that we can shift, push, move, like on a chessboard. And that's impossible. It's wrong. It's just not right. And consumers are taking control. We are not in a control anymore. We can just try to understand that world. And again, as I said, maybe increase the chances of the positive outcome instead of engineering consumer path or consumer journey. It just doesn't work that way anymore. I heard it somewhere. I don't know the source, or maybe it's not even true, but I read somewhere that the people are positively regarding marketeers just one level above the car salespeople. That's the reputation of us marketeers, because people feel abused, manipulated. Even if you listen to the marketing language that we are using, it's really about using marketing tools and using people as a means to an end. It is about extraction of the value. And I believe that marketing, as anything else in the world and anything else within the world of communication, is always about reciprocity. It's always about the exchange of value. So we as marketeers, as brands, it is our responsibility, and I believe in that. That's why I'm in marketing. It's our responsibility to always deliver more value than what we take in return. I mean, no one is naive. Everyone knows that we are taking value in return, but it needs to be a fair exchange. It needs to be reciprocal, because otherwise people feel used, manipulated, abused, and they don't trust brands anymore. So it's a very transactional relationship. That's why I'm saying that, to your point, the relationship is disrespectful. It is disrespectful. And people are fighting back. People are pushing back. People are removing brands from the path of choice. I mean, even in this moment, they are trusting AI, which perhaps they shouldn't, but they are trusting AI much more than they are trusting brands. We know people are cognitive misers. We don't like to think. And in a way, the narrative marketing, blah, blah, all of that is the way to help people to build shortcuts so that people know what to do, so that they don't have to think too much. But they don't trust us anymore. So they are looking for the shortcuts elsewhere, either on Amazon through the product reviews or AI. So everyone is aware of the transactional nature of the relationship. But at least, and people took over, at least they're okay. If I'm manipulated, at least I will go to a trusted source. So there is no doubt about the nature of that relationship. But at least we need to be able to increase the level, to increase the value that we are offering to people in return to their time, to their money, to their attention. So reciprocity, that's at the core of marketing, and we as marketeers have the responsibility to give as much or more than what we take in return.
I love that doctrine, like that we can think about it as value creation. That's such a useful way to think about it, and very practical as well. I think that's a great spot to end it on. I'm sorry for taking so much of your time. But,
it was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on and trusting me to share your views with. I understand that if people wanted to find you, the best spots are probably LinkedIn, which I'll link to in the description of the episode, and also Substack, Rewire Your Mind, which I'll also link to as well. I'll also link to the Quantum State of Branding article you wrote, which is where a lot of what we spoke about today came from, but not exclusively that. There's certainly, I'll link to the honey article as well, I think would be a good one so that people know the backstory of that. Quite an interesting case study, that one. But is there anything else you'd like to finish with? Any parting thoughts before we call it a day?
Yes, just one little thing about me, which I think I meant a marketing practice, which was a real, I would say, my personal alter ego, which was the angry girl. So I used to call it angry girl until the moment someone kindly told me that that's maybe not the most effective way to call my consultancy because people will not be so open to chat me. But the reason I'm saying it's literally my alter ego, because when you read my articles or LinkedIn posts or anything that I say, even I'm sure it will come through this conversation as well, is there is a certain kind of degree of angst and disagreement, and I don't want to call it anger, but I would say a passionate disagreement with the state of marketing around us. The way I think about it is that, yes, it is about anger, but anger as a driving force of changing things for better. Because the world is broken and it is our job to fix it. Your job, my job, the job of people that are listening. So for me, LinkedIn and the Substack that I'm writing, I'm no creator. I have no interest in no creator, no influencer. I have no interest in building a personal brand. I just want to fix things that needs to be improved so that we again earn our justified place in the world of marketing. Let's just all collectively think about our responsibility as marketeers and see if we can, again, all together make things better than they currently are.
Okay, that's an amazing almost call to arms to finish on there. It's certainly given me a bit to think about as well. But I would say that you do write exceptionally well. So it's a shame that you don't want to be a creator because your Substack is brilliant, I'd say.
I'm an accidental creator, just someone who has a lot to say. But that doesn't make me
But you say it well. You say it clearly and well.
Well,
so
thank you very much for that. Thank you. And thank you for having me. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time, Jelena. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, and if you are enjoying the episodes, please leave a review of the podcast on your platform of choice. It really helps to build the podcast credibility and to help others find this type of information.